Hi, I'm Rebecca Moore, and this is Art Watch Radio on WCHE 1520 every Wednesday from 1 to 1:30. So happy you could join us. Today, my guests are Associate Curator at the Brandywine River Museum of Art, Audrey Lewis, and artist Rikki Morley Saunders. So, hi, Audrey. How you doing?
Good. How are you? Good to be here.
Good. Yeah. So we're still waiting on Rikki to join us so we can kind of start the conversation, I guess. But just to give everyone a little rundown of what we're going to be talking about today. So following its grand reopening to the public, the Brandywine River Museum of Art has unveiled a towering new sculpture at its front entrance by Rikki Saunders titled Tipping Point. The sculpture is cast in bronze and features two majestic and fearsome peacocks intertwined in mid-air battle. The life-size sculpture measures almost 7 feet tall with a length of 6 feet and a width of over 5 feet. So, Audrey, can you tell us a little bit about what this new sculpture means for the museum? So I see that some contemporary sculpture obviously is being added. Can you tell us a little bit about what it adds to the collection and where you kind of see the collection moving forward?
Sure. Well, first I should tell everyone that the sculpture that has been there since the 1970s, Boy with a Hawk, has actually not disappeared. It's just been moved to another location on the campus, which is overlooking our Monarch migration station. And as a matter of fact, our director, Thomas Payton, found out a few years ago that the artist Charles Parks, who made the sculpture, actually preferred that it be nearer to the ground. So that's where it is now. But we're excited because we now have this Rikki Saunders new sculpture. As Rebecca said, it's called Tipping Point, and I think it's at the entrance where Boy with a Hawk it was. And it really, I believe, enlivens and energizes our entrance in a really dramatic way. So as you walk up the entrance leading into the courtyard, visitors will encounter this really spiraling composition that entices the visitor to walk around the sculpture to truly understand what is happening. And I think that's one of the best parts about it, is that it really invites and lures you into doing that. The two peacocks are engaged in this fierce battle, but they're beautiful and also a bit startling at the same time. And I didn't know how peacocks fight, so this was a revelation to me that they lift up their wings and that they actually are partly flying when they fight. And it's really something to behold, partly because Rikki has conveyed their passion and their spirit so completely, which she is very adept at. And they're stunning creatures just in and of themselves, and she captures them in such intricate detail because she studies them from life, literally. There's this huge wingspan and powerful bodies, and they're contrasted by their little, small but very forceful heads. And it's unexpected when you are used to seeing them only in captivity, when they show their beautiful feathers. But Rikki has such keen observational skills and has such a deep engagement with innate respect for nature that I think it really complements our dual mission from the Conservancy and Museum of Art to bring together art and the environment. We work to preserve and sustain both the natural and cultural resources of the Brandywine region. And I know Rikki is so passionate about the natural world and protecting natural resources for future generations.
Exactly. So she even had she had a trust for a little bit called Save.
Hi, I'm back on
Oh, hey,
board.
Rikki, there you are. Oh, perfect.
Good timing. Yay.
Good timing.
So,
Rikki, do you want to tell us a little bit about your involvement with the environment and how it kind of goes into your sculpture as well?
Okay, great. So basically, there was a threat to this area and of PennDOT wanting to come in and expand a road. And as we all know, when you make something bigger, more come, and it just is a drive for swelling development, loss of farmland, degradation of water, and so many other environmental issues. So I founded an organization called SAFE, which stands for Safety, Agriculture, Villages, and Environment. And it took 10 years of my life, but I met some of the most extraordinary activists and environmental defense came on board with us, along with amazing scientists from Stroudwater Research and the Brandywine Conservancy. And the road is yet to be expanded, and it looks like we're looking at roundabouts. So that just takes a bit of my time away from sculpting, but I loved being able to give back, and it's such a special place.
Yeah, well, and as Audrey was saying, that it really fits in with the tie of the Conservancy and the museum. And before you joined us, we were talking about Tipping Point and what this means for the museum. And I think this sculpture is kind of your biggest undertaking yet. Can you tell us a little bit about how this monumentous piece came to be?
Well, I love peacocks, and I've always wanted to do a series of fighting peacocks. And for years, I used to make gestures of how I saw this sculpture coming into being, me being the peacocks fighting. And finally, I made a little maquette, and Frolic was here for dinner, and we snuck away to the kitchen and looked and talked about the maquette of the Fighting Peacocks, which did become Tipping Point. And, Frolic comments, he loved the tension and the elegance and the split second in time. And if you saw these birds move, you'd say, what? They are so fast and so remarkable and aerobatic. And he also mentioned, when we were looking at the maquette about, remarked over and over about all the movement and how it carried his eye from one place to another. And, the possibilities that this piece could convey, in other individuals' minds. And so that was a huge push forward. And when we all lost our dear loving Frolic, it was that and my dad that just kept me going.
How long from basically like that first maquette, right, that Frolic saw, all the way to the first casting of completion? What's a timeline for something like that?
Well, I have a full life. I have grandkids, and I travel with my husband fishing around the world. And so I do a lot of travel. And then when fox hunting season comes, I have to say I would hunt 3 times a week. So I didn't work. I do not work like my dear friend Jamie Wyeth or others who they paint and paint and paint. So I have to say that I started it and finished it, thank goodness, before I had anyways, you don't want to know about that. So I guess, that problems arise, like the wings were a problem, and I went to different sculpting friends, and then I finally went to the foundry and said, if this is ever going to get done, you have to help me figure out this wing problem. Because I insisted on having the wings the way I wanted them, or saw them in my mind. And so it took, some time, but with the foundry and then putting some floor joists between some beams and some chains and wires and such, I was able to complete it the way I wanted it.
Wow, that's so amazing. It really is. And being one of the lucky ones to see it in the studio while you're working on it, it's pretty spectacular to see that entire process. For people who aren't really familiar with like the bronze casting and sculpture process, and just like a quick rundown, could you at least quickly explain? I mean, I know there's like the joists and the beams and everything you had just mentioned, but it doesn't just become bronze. There's a lot of steps in between.
Very true. It's kind of a crazy. The lost wax process is a little crazy, and there is an interview that Suzanne Roberts did that's on the website for anybody that wants to see it. But basically, typically you start out with armature, and armature is basically your foundation. It's the structure that has to hold everything. So, when you're building a house, you need a good foundation and, structural beams, etc. And so they can be as simple as flanges and pipes and wire. And but I also did one of them with a wonderful welding friend of mine, and we welded the gesture. But again, it's a lot of pipes and wires, and then it's foam. And then how you seal that, again, is yet another process. Before you can even start to apply, you need to get your critical mass there with the foam, etc. And then you apply your wax or clay. But once you've gotten what you saw, Rebecca, in the studio, a final piece, then the foundry comes in and they make a rubber mold, which is layers and layers of rubber. And once they get enough, and that rubber is so flexible that it gets all the detail when they later on pour wax into it. But then they have to do a mother mold on top of it because it's so flexible. They have to hold the integrity of the piece. So that is plastered. And so all of that is part of the molding process. And then that was shipped to Utah, to Metal Arts Foundry. And then they poured the waxes. I work on all of my waxes. It doesn't matter if it's the first edition or the last edition. I always work on my waxes because things do get lost, and you want to bring it back to its 100% state. Then that
when you
goes
say work on your waxes, do you literally, like, if a feather doesn't have as much detail, you go and like recarve it into the wax, kind of?
I add wax and carve it in. You got it. And so when they pull the wax, what I neglected to say is, so they put these molds back together and they pour hot wax in them several times and swish them around and such. And then I usually help them take the wax out of the mold that we talked about, the rubber mold that's so flexible, and because I know which way the feathers go. And it's real easy to go the wrong way, sort of like when you're carving in wood, which my father taught me to do in my 20s. If you go against the grain, oops. So, and sometimes they'll even sprue. And when I say sprue, once the wax is done, they have to make it so, this is really complicated without visuals, but they put wax tubing that they will put to attach the piece of wax to a cup that they will end up pouring the bronze into. So once all that wax is together, then it goes into the slurry room, which is where they dip it into fine porcelain in the beginning and let it dry, more porcelain, dry, and then thicker and thicker until it's almost like a stucco thickness with sand and such. And that, then once it's done, after 14 of dipping and letting it dry, they take it, put it in a kiln that is so hot that it burns out the wax without expanding and breaking the mold. But that, too, sometimes happens. But anyway, then they pour the bronze in. The bronze cools. They chip away all the slurry or plaster. And then they cut off all those sprues. And then I have the most extraordinary person, Ed Spears, at Metal Arts Foundry, who does all the chasing in metal, which is real difficult. And I actually have done that as well. And so then the final part, the fun part, is we have Kite, who does amazing patinas. And patina is basically you're making rust out of different chemicals. So it's how hot something is or how cool with your blowtorch along with the different chemicals that you use, and that's how you create a patina. And then you seal it with wax while it's hot, is usually what I do. And some people do it when it's cold. And you get a different color. So then you create it and ship it.
Is that all? No.
Is that all? Exactly. So basically what's interesting, so if anybody could think of this, is you go from a positive, which was in my studio, to a negative, which was the mold that they made. Then they poured wax in there, and you came up with a positive again. Then with the slurry process and putting it in the kiln and burning out the wax, you end up with a negative again, where you put the bronze in and come up with a positive. Does that make sense?
Interesting process. Absolutely, yeah. And I'm sorry to put a pause in this. Well, it does sound a little crazy, doesn't it? I know. Well, I'm sorry to put a pause in this, but we do have to take a quick break. But when we come back, we'll have more with Rikki Saunders and Audrey Lewis. Welcome back to Art Watch Radio. This is Rebecca Moore, Director of Somerville Manning Gallery, and today my guests are Audrey Lewis, Associate Curator at the Brandywine River Museum of Art, and artist Rikki Morley Saunders. So before the break, Rikki was telling us a little bit about the complicated and fascinating process of bronze sculpture work. But Audrey, if you could, so the Brandywine is now reopened. You went under some renovations, or if I could say that, but
yeah.
And do you see the unveiling of Rikki's sculpture kind of like a turning point, dare I say tipping point, of the museum and the kind of the direction it's going towards in the future?
Well, I think it really symbolizes it in a very concrete way. And as you mentioned, we just reopened. I just wanted to clarify something, though. I know Rikki mentioned Frolic, and I just wanted to say that he is actually George Weymouth. His nickname was Frolic, well known to everybody who knew him as Frolic. And he was our founder, one of the founders of the Brandywine Museum and Conservancy. So, and with that being
thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, I just thought people might wonder, but he was a great man, founder, and also, as Rikki described, someone who really loved nature and was concerned with the environment. Our collection, inside and out, has been evolving in the last few years. We have a 15-acre campus, and that includes buildings, native plants, and a river trail. And Rikki's is the most recent addition to our outdoor sculpture. It's the very newest, actually. But in the last several years, the museum has had a kind of an ongoing sculptural program in which we have invited living artists to explore their responses to the local landscape. So these include James Welling's gradients, which are outdoors, and you will see them as you walk through the campus. They're actually it's an aluminum sculpture with various colors in response to the local landscape colors. And there are several others as well. And there's more information to come, but there is another upcoming project for this summer by artist Ian Stabler, and that will be revealed on the website in the next couple days. He's been commissioned to create a temporary site-specific installation on one of the trails. In this way, we're really evolving, and it's wonderful to have Rikki's sculpture there at the entrance to announce it, so to speak. So our museum collection of paintings and drawings inside the museum, of course, is growing and evolving as well. And as everyone knows, the Wyeths are sort of the core of our collection, as are regional artists from the 19th, 20th century. But we're enriching the collection in other areas as well, partly to put the work by the Wyeths into a broader context of American art. So we've recently added works by 20th century artists Thomas Hart Benton and Norman Rockwell, also Alan Freelon and Doris Lee, all of whom did not work in the region, but who actually are important for context of understanding Wyeth's work. All the Wyeths, Andrew and Jamie especially, and then for illustration as well with Norman Rockwell. I think that puts NCY's work into a broader context. And we've also added contemporary work by artists Mary Page Evans and Elizabeth Osborne. I know Rebecca's very familiar with both of those artists. And we have a wonderful gallery, first floor gallery, where you can find work by these artists on view. We refreshed the galleries and put in new colors. We painted the galleries each a different color, and it's really beautiful, and I hope people will come to see it. And we're committed really to future expansion of the works in the collection. So we'll create a richer context for everyone in which the era in which the Wyeth artists worked respectively. But we would love people to come see, and Rebecca, you'll know, we have an upcoming exhibition that has just opened.
Yes, exactly. And, the museum is such a staple of the area and such a true gift for everyone in the area and people who come through. And Rikki, with your piece being installed right at the entrance, I mean, every visitor who walks into that museum will experience your work. What do you hope they will take away from your sculpture or remember most about it?
Thank you, Rebecca. I am so honored, obviously, and I hope that Tipping Point, Tipping Point can mean so many different things to so many different people. But to me, Tipping Point is a symbol of fortitude, resilience, raising above adversity. It's what makes great men and women: determination, grit, moral strength, and people that are willing to jump in with both feet, even when they don't see where they're going to land. And I hope that everyone that sees this piece will, one, enjoy the beauty of these magnificent birds, and that Tipping Point will speak to them personally, and everyone will find something in their own life to reflect upon.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Obviously, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm just over the moon that because Frolic really sort of stepped into my dad's shoes and was such a mentor, and I'm just thrilled that it was dedicated in loving memory of George, A. Frolic, famous, and that is placed right in front of the museum that he started. We could not have accomplished in this area what has been accomplished if it wasn't for Frolic and all the others that jumped in. And the Conservancy has just done an extraordinary job. I mean, they're always there for people. And, so I'm thrilled, over the moon.
Well, and then because, oh my gosh, I just had a complete lack of remembering. But so you have done peacock sculptures a lot, Rikki, over the past. Where does your inspiration for them come from? Yeah. Count at least,
I have 5, 6 friends. So I have the dearest friends in California who I used to live out there and for many years, and they sent some chicks home. They gave me some chicks, and so I've had this mustard of peacocks for over nearly 30 years. And I've grown so fond of these creatures, and I love spending time with them. And, I do my best to protect the peahens when they're on the clutch of eggs, and the newborn chicks, when they're first hatched, they can't get up in the trees. So I sleep underneath the stars on, an army cot that my dad gave me. But I love it. And then, but the funniest thing is when these little chicks start to walk, to go up in the trees, they literally kind of walk up the tree, flapping their wings. I mean, it's hysterical. And then they snuggle underneath their mom. It's just beautiful to watch. And, I've loved, learning their language, like the deer that I had for 17 years. I mean, it is such a gift. to learn their language, and you do. And one morning I woke up and I heard this noise that they make, and I know, okay, what that means is she's telling her babies to get out of there, and she's going to deal with a predator. I found Tatiana fighting a red-tailed hawk.
Wow.
Oh, my.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, they're amazing. And, it's fascinating to watch the males with their fighting rituals, which we see in most species, and also their mating rituals. It's just, and don't leave a door open. I came home to 4 in the dining room one night.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Now, they're very, very humorous. They're very curious. Some of them I have had a closer relationship to, like Nuria and Alexander and Sasha now. And they're with me all the time. And when I was making maquettes in the parking lot, literally one day I stepped back to look at my work, and I stepped right on Alexander's tail. He laid down behind me.
Giving you his opinion about the work, yeah.
I mean, so they're always, yes, a lot of people like Bugatti and all these wonderful, wonderful artists that I just adore would do leopards and lions, and I seem to be into peacocks.
Yeah, that is your muse, exactly.
Yep.
What do you have? Do you have anything in the works upcoming? I know you're probably chomping at the bit to get back into the studio after such a big project like this.
I am, and I had a bit of a hiccup with an automobile accident, but I just finished, and I love it. It's actually at the Foundry here, Independence Casting, and it's 2 dolphins. It's a mother and her calf. And,
oh, wow, yeah.
When they leap, the baby's always in the curve of the mother. I mean, no matter what creatures you're observing, there's just beautiful moments, and I just really feel blessed that, I've been able to witness so many beautiful things. And one of my favorite things is hearing a newborn foal and the mare nicker. It's just, whew.
Well, that's what I think is so wonderful, and why your work is so fitting for the Brandywine River Museum of Art is because both you, the museum, and the Conservancy have this common goal of nature, conserving it through art, and vice versa. And so it couldn't be a more perfect fit in my mind.
Yeah, we're very excited to have the museum open again, and with having that sculpture at the entrance, really makes it even more special.
Oh, so fabulous! Yeah, it touches my heart, and I do. I really hope, Tipping Point can be anything to anyone, and I really, it is just beautiful and fluid and such. But there really is that thing where we can all, reflect, and I think it's different for everyone, and I hope that they come away with something that they love.
That's so great. Well, we have to wrap up, but thanks so much to artists Rikki Morley Saunders and Audrey Lewis.
My pleasure.
My pleasure, too.
My pleasure.
And make sure everyone goes stop by the Brandywine River Museum of Art to see Rikki's new sculpture, Tipping Point. The museum is now open, along with the museum's new exhibition, Ralston Crawford, Air, Space, and War. Thanks for joining us today on Art Watch Radio. This is Rebecca Moore, and make sure to tune in next Wednesday from 1 to 1:30 for a new episode. Take care, everyone.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.